for melodic heavy metal. Playing it heavier, louder, raunchier, faster. 99.1 CJAM. This is the Signals of Intuition.
99.1 CJAM-FM, you're listening to the Signals of Intuition, 2 hours of melodic hard rock and heavy metal coming your way. That was Queensryche right there with their classic tune, Queen of the Reich. Tonight on the show, we've got a very special guest. We've got the drummer of Queensryche, Mr. Scott Rockenfield, on the line. Queensryche has a new self-titled album out featuring a brand new singer, Todd Latore. So Scott, let's get you potted up right here. And I think everything's in working order right now.
Oh, excellent. Hey, listen, thanks a lot, man, for taking the time today.
Oh, dude, no worries. You know, I've been a big fan for years, so I'm totally glad to do it.
Yeah, right on. Hey, where are you anyway? I think you're in Canada, right?
Yes, I'm in Windsor, right next to Detroit.
Yeah, so you're just right above Detroit. Okay, that's what I thought. Excellent, man. Right on.
Do you mind if we start by sort of diving back into Queensryche's early days and your early influences as a musician and that sort of thing, and then move forward into what you're doing now?
Listen, that's fine. Whatever's good for you. You shoot and I'll answer. I'm totally fine.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so first of all, what were some of your earliest musical influences growing up? Like, what influenced you to become a drummer?
Yeah, so many great things. But a little background. So I started playing when I was 12, and just one of those things where I saw drums at my elementary school that I was at, and just got interested in the whole thing. So from that point forward, I kind of just became self-taught. I was just interested in doing it. So about a year later, my folks bought me a drum kit for Christmas. It was just a your crappy thing off there was no eBay back then, but if there was, it would have been called a crappy eBay kit at the time, right? Just something small, because they wanted to get me into it. So I did that. I set this thing up in my bedroom, and I just started putting headphones on and listening to my favorite, again, this is funny, my favorite LPs at the time, because I actually used to have a player back then, and, it was all good. So bands like, just that inspired me. I was a huge Judas Priest fan. So even back in those early days, Judas Priest was big for me. Bands, moving forward, Boston, when that time came, and Kiss, I was a big Kiss fan. I wanted to be a big rock star. I don't know what happened, but I just wanted to be a big rock star, I guess. And so I put the headphones on and just made a bunch of noise, thinking that I was playing along with these guys and trying to become something. So, those influences were definitely big. But as I really got, a few years after that, I really got dialed into kind of pushing into the bands that were really progressive. I became a big Rush fan.
Oh, well, you're a drummer. That's just a given, right?
Yeah, and I'm giving some kudos to my friends in Canada right now, since we're talking with you as well. Great stuff. I've been a big Rush fan ever since then. I still am to this day. And so he was a big influence on me. And then I got into bands like Van Halen and Iron Maiden, were big things. And interestingly enough, I get asked this question quite a bit, Brandon, so it's definitely not out of the ordinary. And, I was really into the drummers of the bands that I liked. I was really into the ones that really were progressive. They kind of pushed the envelope, and they just did things differently. And I found that to be fun and challenging. Neil was obviously greatly inspirational as being a guy that did that. But, Alex Van Halen, I always thought he was amazing in what he did for the band as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Boston, that first Boston record was insanely cool, and I tried to learn everything that was on that. And, then the Iron Maiden stuff, back in the early days of Maiden, when Clive Burr was playing drums, which was totally sad last year when we had to recognize his passing. But, that was very cool for me. And then I moved into the later stages of Iron Maiden as well, with Nico and all of that. So, stuff like that. The Police, Copeland was a big influence on me and still is. Then bands like Pink Floyd were a big influence on me, which is not really a progressive drummer thing as much as it was just a cool musical talent between all of those guys. And man, the list could go on and on, I guess, if you're going to give me more than an hour to talk about.
Oh, if you want to go on bands, we'll just say screw the whole Queensryche thing, and we'll just, hey, what's your favorite album? We'll just go right off that.
You know what we can do? We can get out the phone bar, which is what I do with my friends now. We Skype, and we, later in the afternoon or the evening, we'll do happy hour because we're not in the same country or the same room, and we'll just have beer and talk on the internet. Funnier than hell these days. So anyway, listen, it's all good, and there's a lot of inspirations. And, some of those, interestingly enough, for Queensryche, once I started playing at 12, and then, listen, when I was 17 is when we made our first Queensryche EP. So I didn't...
You were only 17 at that time?
Yes, I was yes.
Oh, my God. I thought you were, like, maybe 20, 21. Jeez, wow.
Yeah, I was 17 when we did that. I actually had just graduated from high school, and then we made that in that summer that right after I got out of school here in the Seattle area, and... I guess I've never looked back on everything. It's been quite the career for 30-something years now as we've gone on. So, yeah, it's been good. So, listen, bottom line, I've always been self-taught, and maybe that's inspirational to people that are listening or not, to be honest, but it's worked for me, and it's been a lot of fun, and, we've had a great career for, many decades now, and things are going very well again for us as we speak.
You said you're obviously essentially totally self-taught. Did you take any lessons or study theory or anything of that nature, or just like basically you've sort of done it yourself completely?
I really did. I'd done it myself completely, and my teachers were just my headphones and then listening to my favorites that we were like just talking about. Those I'm always been really good at listening and then learning from what I'm listening to. Although my dad would tell me that I never listened to him and never followed anything he told me to do, but that's a completely different story. So anyway, yeah, I was just one of those guys that did that. And then once again, it's kind of carried on even later in my career. And I'll kind of cut to a slight tangent, but it's relative, which is, I've been scoring music for films and, movies and video games and film trailers for many years now as well. And I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I make it all up, but I'm writing these 100-piece orchestra things and doing films and all of that. And I guess maybe I'm just good at faking it with all this stuff so well. They all say life is smoke and mirrors, and maybe I've learned how to be really good at my smoke and mirrors and what I do, but I can't complain.
Yeah. So when you score that stuff, I guess we'll just kind of jump all over the place, but when you score that, so you're not just kind of the guy playing the drums, like you're actually writing this top to bottom kind of thing then.
I certainly am. Yep. I have a studio in my house. I write everything on keyboards, pianos and keyboards, and I've got all the computer recording equipment and all the sound libraries that I have at my disposal, which is very common in the film scoring industry these days. Everything is done within a Pro Tools or Logic or these programs, that you can write all of this stuff and all these parts and record pretty realistic sounding versions of your mock-ups when you do stuff. But I do it that way, and then I take everything down to Los Angeles, and I've got a bunch of guys that I work with from the Hans Zimmer camp and James Newton Howard's people, Danny Elfman's people. Yeah, I've got quite a great team of guys, and they'll take all the things that I've written and they'll write it out all on paper for the orchestra, and they'll spread it out and make sure it's all, correct, and I didn't, write any bum notes or anything like that, and then we go in and record it. And then I get paid at some point, I guess. And they actually use it. Funny enough, was last week, and not as funny as it really was, just cool again for me. I'm really happy about it and very proud of all my opportunities. But I just finished a trailer a couple of days ago for Sony Films for the new Will Smith movie. It's called After Earth. Mm-hmm. And it's this new M. Night Shyamalan movie that's coming out. They asked me to do another film trailer. So I did all the music in the film trailer, and now I'm working on some stuff for the new RoboCop movie for Sony as well. So it's completely different than playing drums, is what I'm saying.
Wow, that makes me happy on two fronts because I'm a big RoboCop fan, and I had no idea they were doing a new movie. So that's very cool.
Yeah, do a Google on RoboCop 2013. You'll see some of the coolest imagery. It's kind of like the Batman thing where they completely reinvented Batman to be this modern, thing when they started doing that with Chris Nolan years ago. So that's what RoboCop kind of looks like these days. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah. So anyway, fun stuff. I'm a lucky guy. I'm an absolutely lucky guy that I can be a rock guy, but I can also have fun doing all these other things. And then, I worked on the Call of Duty Black Ops video game a couple of years ago, the first one that came out in 2010. I did a bunch of music on that, and I played all the drums with the orchestra on that.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's crazy. Well, that's like one of the biggest selling games of all time, so that's insane to have been involved with that.
It really is, and it's a lot of fun, and I've done a bunch of work on that stuff ever since. So, I guess it works, this Queensryche thing, for the many years we've been doing it, because all the guys that make those games at Activision and Treyarch that make Call of Duty, they're huge Queensryche fans.
Oh, great.
You just throw that card down all the time, and it seems to get my foot in the door with all these really fun people that I get to work with. So
that's fantastic.
Right.
So then, returning to Queensryche, how did Queensryche come together as a band?
Well, that was a kind of a cool thing. It's probably not unlike a lot of other people. We were basically high school buddies. And funny thing, though, we actually didn't go to the same high schools. But we were so close. We all lived in the same area, right outside of Seattle here. And so all the schools, even if you didn't go to the same one, you knew each other because we all hung out at, any of the gatherings or football games or parties. And, I was into the music scene at that point, which was pretty big here in Seattle, even back when I was younger then. And so all the musicians kind of tended to hang out. There were some great venues that bands were playing at. You could always kind of coagulate and join up and be around each other. But that's how I met Michael, and that's how I met Eddie, and even Chris DeGarmo, who was, in the band back for the first 15 years or so of our career up until 97. Chris and I actually went to school when we were in the 6th grade together. So we knew each other from way back when. And that's it. We were just good buddies, and we just wanted to make music, and we just happened to be the right elements of the band to do that. And we started rehearsing in my parents' basement and writing songs. And like I said, and then when I was 17, I only knew Michael and Eddie for a year or two. And then we started making the Queensryche stuff together, and it just seemed to work.
And then what kind of stuff were you guys covering in the early days? Like I've read about you guys doing, I think Animal Magnetism was one, and so you guys were doing a lot of classic metal, eh?
Yeah, well, listen, by the way, the early Scorpion stuff was cool as crud. I love that stuff too, by the way. So yeah, we did some fun things. We did a few gigs as a cover band before we decided to start writing our own material. We used to open the show with a song called Dissonant Aggressor by Judas.
Oh, nice. Great tune.
Yeah. We used to pick the crazy stuff, Killers by Iron Maiden and, Animal Magnetism, like you mentioned, and just some of our favorites that we like that, were inspiring. We were all very much into that type of genre and that, the vibe of all that. And most of it was always by somebody that wrote a good song. Dio stuff was always fantastic. And anyway, yeah, we probably didn't do it all very well, because we were pretty young at the time, but it was sure fun. And it sure got us to be, enthusiastic about wanting to be those people. So we decided just soon after playing a few gigs around the Seattle area to just bail on doing that and then just focusing on writing our own material, which basically became the first EP that we did.
And then, so Chris, he's a pretty decent singer. Why did you guys decide to add obviously Jeff, a full-time singer to the band?
Well, a big part of it was just that Chris didn't want to be he didn't want to be a full-time singer / guitar player. It wasn't really, his main interest. And we always liked, I think most of the bands that we liked as collectively together were always bands that had just a great front man, a person. It was a solid unit where you had dual guitar players, the bass and the drums, and a guy that sang. So maybe it was part of the aesthetic of the whole thing as well for us. But, Jeff was a good match back when we started writing songs together and making Queensryche and doing our thing. So we just moved on from there. And Chris was able to do a lot of, you could do a lot of the background vocals and all the great stuff to give the support for Jeff, which Eddie was doing as well, by the way.
Yeah, and I don't think Eddie gets enough credit for that either. But the guy, he's a very, very good singer.
Well, and thank you. He'll love to hear that, and he certainly is now getting able to do what he's been able to do for a while. But we're giving him the ability, which is on the new record that we've got out now. He he wrote some great stuff on the record, even lyrics and melodies to a few of the songs. And he's really digging in deep with Todd, our new singer, when we perform live, and just supporting everything that Todd's doing and all that. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
And then, so jumping ahead a year or two to when you guys did The Warning, what was it like working in London with James Guthrie? And you guys were obviously coming up as this new band, fresh out of high school, and you're now thrust out into the real world doing this major recording. What was that like?
Well, that was pure chaos. Not really, I had never even been on a plane really until we got to the point of going out and making our first record together, which was, that's how fresh we were at doing all of this. But Brandon, it was a fantastic experience, going over there. And you've done your research. So the James Guthrie thing, by the way, was great. I mean, he had come off doing The Wall a few years prior to us making the Warning record, so he was deep in the Pink Floyd camp, which was, that was a big attraction for us, obviously, because we were all big Pink Floyd fans at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So he was just great. He was a great musical talent and was really interested in working with us. And we just thought it would be a good pair together. And so we dug in and did it. And, we lived in London for 3 months. We rented apartments, or flats, I guess, as you want to call it when you're over there. And each of us just lived in our own place. And we spent 3 months over there working in 2 or 3 different studios, tracking all the stuff. And one of them was actually Abbey Road. We were one of the last rock bands to use the original Beatles console at Abbey Road.
Really? Wow.
So we did all the, the orchestration there with Michael Kamen. So there's a couple songs on The Warning, Roads to Madness and No Sanctuary, that had actual orchestra. And Michael Kamen, who went on, from that point on, he went on to be a big A-list movie composer as well before he passed away in the late 90s. But he was big with The Wall. He worked with Pink Floyd and all that too. Anyway, we did all the orchestra recordings at Abbey Road. So that was a lot of fun. And once again, like I said, we've done some really fun, great things, and I'm totally blessed to be able to tell stories about it, all of it, to be honest.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And of course, I mean, for me being a fan, it's great to hear all this stuff because, like you guys doing Abbey Road, I had no clue.
Yeah, it's funny. It just doesn't get asked a lot because a lot of people don't know about it. It was good times. The whole thing in London was a major experience. I was young, and I look back on it now and. You just kind of you just treasure, I guess, all the moments. Either good, bad, or indifferent. They were all good, even though I've made my share of mistakes in my life for sure. But there was a great beginning at that point to a horizon that we were moving towards. In terms of our career and our path of making music and everything like that. So. It's always good to, absorb and learn new things, right?
Yeah. And then how, James Guthrie, was he sort of really instrumental in bringing the band's sound to the next level? Because if you go from the EP, there's only a year between the EP and The Warning, and you can hear a huge improvement in terms of your abilities and sound and all of that. Yeah,
well, certainly, he was, obviously his relationship and his experience with working with bands like Pink Floyd and everything were a great asset for him, and they always were. And that was something we did want. We wanted that type of experience to come in because we knew there was definitely things that we could learn and get better at. So that combination, but also just the time, between every record and the things that we did, maybe we started getting better because of just, it was practice 24/7 for us. And not necessarily just practice, but we were touring and doing things, even on the EP, and then, we were constantly on the road. After we even did the EP, we went touring around the world with Dio, for example. And, when you're playing every night, it just kind of starts to make you a little better, I think, at what you're doing. So that helped a bit. And I don't know, I can't really explain all the little details that went into
yeah, for sure.
the new chemistry, but it was good, and I think it was an evolution. I think every one of our records has become a better evolution of who we are and what we're able to do together. And then even currently now, even after 32 years, I think we're still evolving and doing things on a better level.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Scott, right now we've got to go to a break. Can I get you to pick one song from the EP and then 2 songs from The Warning?
Yeah. Night Rider for me.
Okay. And then 2 from The Warning?
Warning would be Enforce.
Oh, classic. Love that tune.
And probably the title track, The Warning.
Oh, great. Yeah, that was one of my first favorite Queensryche tunes.
Yeah.
First of many.
That's awesome.
All right, so here we go. This is The Night Rider off of the Queensryche EP from 1983, and we'll be back with more Scott Rockenfield after this. 99.1 CJAM-FM. There's a couple of classic Queensryche tracks right there. We had 2 tracks from The Warning. That was the title track and In Force. And then before that, we had Night Rider off of the Queensryche EP. Now, Scott, we talked a little bit about the first 2 albums, and I'd like to talk about Rage for Order right now.
For certain, man.
Now, for me, Rage for Order seemed to be a really big step in terms of the band, and you guys sort of went from the sort of classic Judas Priest type of sound, Iron Maiden and all that, of The Warning, and you guys sort of transformed it into something really unique using like techno influences and all sorts of different things. What were some of the influences at the time?
Well, yeah. I mean, we were definitely becoming a little more worldly, and one with our traveling and one with just our relationship together and our desire to push our own limits, and Rage was an absolute definition of pushing our own limits at the time. It's funny when we did that record, Brandon, we got done with it and we delivered it to the record company, and EMI Capital at the time, who we were with, they were like, "What?" This is you're giving us the record, because they were expecting something that they could go sell instantly. And my point is kind of like, the bands in the LA area, they had hits, they had these things. It was becoming quite the marketing fair down there in a positive way. We did something completely as a left turn, somewhat, I think. But I think we, musically challenged ourselves. We were really into the new technologies that were out, whether it was in the sounds that we could use or the actual equipment. And we really liked that. And so we also used that to help push us musically, and it helped to direct some of the directions of the songs, so to speak. And God, once again, it was almost like you just had to be there in the room with us, because we were probably just tripping out on something. I don't know. Not, and I don't mean that in a bad way or an illegal way. It was just like we were just really, our minds were just going, in some really fun directions. And I think Rage was just an example of just not wanting to be like everybody else and seeing how far we could push ourselves to make a record that still had, a collection of songs and an atmosphere and a feel to it that just felt right for us.
And then, okay, so then jumping to the next record, Mindcrime, something I've wanted to know for a long time, and I'm actually really glad now talking to you I get to ask this, is the drum sound on Mindcrime and Empire, to me, are probably my favorite in history. Like, I love putting those records on and just listening to sort of, how Jimbo mixed all of that.
Yeah.
How did you get that snare sound? And do you remember what snare you used?
I remember that on both records, and thanks for, boy, we could chat all day about Mindcrime and Empire, I suppose. Those were some pretty big projects for us. I do. So I was a Tama endorsee back in those days, so I played all Tama drums. We had, I don't remember the exact model or anything that I had, but the Mindcrime kit was a black kit, and the Empire kit 2 years later in that studio was a white kit. So they're top of the line at the time, and I'm sorry I'm kind of spacing out on
okay.
The exact details. But listen, a lot of my sound. So if I back up and I go, Jimbo or James Barton, who you mentioned, that engineered and worked on those records with us, was a huge defining point of the sound as well. By the way, he was definitely a big player in how those sounds became so apparent for us as a band, and a great signature. And I wanted that type of sound. So one was Neil. I was a big Neil fan, and I liked that sound. And I thought that sound that he got would fit well with what I was writing and doing in Queensryche. Because that type of sound is good with this type of music, I think, because I think you get all the intricacies and you can hear everything. When somebody like Neil plays such great stuff, you got to be able to hear it all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to get the dynamic. And anyway, long story short, Jimbo had worked on Rush stuff. I mean, that was one of the reasons why we got him and Peter Collins. So Peter Collins produced both of those records for us, and Jimbo did the engineering and the mixing and everything on it as well. but those guys had both come off just doing a couple of the Rush records just prior to Mindcrime. So that's where they kind of came into our camp. So they brought that influence with them, and Jimbo especially, because him working with Neil was a great thing, and he brought it in going, this is going to work great. Let's work on this and find your own sound, but we can use that as a frame of reference because of how it works with Rush. We think it'll work very well with this, and so that's where we came. And I'm glad that you bring it up, that it's such a defining thing, because to me, it's absolutely defining. That's one of my favorite times of our career on those records, and for me, that's one of my favorite sounds that I've ever had that I like.
Yeah.
Because I think it reads really well with our music. And then after I say all this, I would have to put Jimbo on the phone, because he could tell you everything. He's kind of become a rock star now with us, because everybody likes what he does with Queensryche, and it's a good thing. So anyway, that was kind of how we get it. Listen, I tune my snare drum as tight as it can possibly go, because I like the feel of it, and then you get this really great crack out of it, and then we record it. So for some,
it's funny. I really wish I'm a guitar player. I only know so much about drumming, but I mean,
yeah. What's funny is, even though I do all that, I can get the whole kit ready, and we're in the studio and we're doing our thing, or even when we're doing shows. Like right now, I got my drum tech and everything. When I'm on the road, it's all tuned up, and these guys will do line check for me, during the day. When they're checking our gear and getting stuff ready for us for sound check, or when we're in the studio. They'll kind of do the same thing, so that I'm not the one doing all that tedious work before I got to sit down and focus on my performance,
Mm-hmm.
But they'll get up and play the same kit, and it won't sound anywhere close to when I sit down and play it. Or I'll get some other drummer can sit down and play it, some of my buddies, and it'll never be the same, because it's kind of the way that you do hit the drum and, use your wrist, I guess, or it's your delivery as yourself. I couldn't sit behind one of their kits and it wouldn't sound the same as them either, because I don't play like they do as well. So it kind of goes back and forth. But
yeah, and it's like one of the oldest sayings in the book, but it's so true, is the sound is in the hands. The sound's in who is doing it.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it absolutely is. So maybe in a way it's kind of my job security too. Nobody can come take my spot if they want to sound like I did on Mindcrime or Empire, I guess. Or something.
All right, Scott, we've got to go to another break right now. Can I get you to pick 2 songs off of Rage for Order, and then 1 song off of Operation Mindcrime?
Rage for Order, I would say I Will Remember and I Dream in Infrared.
Nice. Do you guys think you guys will drop that song into the set?
Anything's possible, Brandon.
Cool. Very cool.
You're coming to me off record as a fan. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I'll put it in the show for you. Okay, Mindcrime. I would say Spreading the Disease.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's got that nice tom build up in the beginning too.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so here we go. This is Queensryche with one of my favorite songs from Rage for Order. This is I Dream in Infrared. 99.1 CJAM-FM. There's Queensryche right there with Spreading the Disease from their classic album Operation Mindcrime. Before that, we had 2 tracks off of Rage for Order from the MTV Unplugged sessions. We had I Will Remember, and before that was I Dream in Infrared. Tonight on the show, we've had a very special guest with us. We have Mr. Scott Rockenfield of Queensryche. He's been with us for the first hour of the show, and he's been gracious enough to stick through to the end of the show. And now after you guys did Operation Mindcrime, you guys did Empire, which was arguably your biggest commercial success, and it opened a lot of new doors in terms of airplay and Grammy nominations. How did your own life change as a result of the newfound fame, and what sort of impact did it have on the band?
Well, it was kind of a big picture thing, like you're saying. It definitely was a huge influence on the band with our audience, in terms of massive sales. It definitely was a huge commercial success, like you're saying. And, it adds things to your life that you got to, some are good and some are bad, to be honest. And you got to kind of figure out what to do with yourself. I mean, financially was a huge change, when you have massive commercial success. Obviously, the first thing that comes rolling in is money.
And then, so did you notice the band dynamic changing at all, or did it sort of bring you guys closer together, sort of us versus the world now?
Well, I think it was a little bit of both. I think it was a lot of work on top of the great success and, the financial gain that you get from something like that, it required a ton of work. We actually toured around the world almost nonstop for 14 months in support of that record because everybody wanted us to do it. And, that's how also we made more money by going out and playing shows and doing it. So I don't think I even saw my house like 2 or 3 times in that 14 months.
Oh, wow.
And listen, that sounds like a lot of fun to most people that haven't done it, but trust me, it's a lot of work. It's 24/7. You don't really sleep much, and you're constantly working.
Yeah.
We wanted that, and it's a good thing. So you come home, it kind of takes you a while to unwind, and then you start realizing, so we've had commercial success. We're making money finally, because listen, it took up until about Empire before the band actually started making a decent living. We actually struggled for many years, unfortunately, and this is now going back to our earlier discussion on some of the earlier records, but we were one of those bands that got kind of taken with bad management and our finances being spent behind our back type of thing.
Yeah.
Mindcrime was the beginning of a change, but Mindcrime was only of the first stepping stone of getting out of a big hole in the ground, basically. And so Empire was a great time for us. It was perfect timing. It lifted us back up. It gave us high spirits. But then you also start to reflect on yourself personally. And I think there was some changes within some people in the band at that point about how to deal with the fame and fortune and all that. And did it really, because I think every band thinks they want to get to that point. But once you do, then what do you do? Have you made it to the top, or is there still another peak to go to? Because I always look for pushing myself to find, what's the next thing. I'm still not satisfied, but when you get a big success like that, I don't know. I was cool. I was ready to keep going and having fun and making records and stuff. And I'm not saying that we all weren't, but dynamics did change a bit within the band at that point, a little bit. We did Promiseland soon thereafter. Well, it was about 3 years after that, and that was a much different record for us. We didn't want to make Empire again just because we thought we could sell more millions of records by doing it. And but I think then that's when the headspace started to roll a little bit. And for whatever it's worth, listen, it's a lot of years, a lot of water under the bridge and stuff. But God, we still kept making records after that. Go figure.
Yeah.
And we still are now.
Yeah.
So.
And then since we're on Promiseland, you created the album's opening track, 928?
That's when I was born. Yeah.
Oh, I see. How did you go about creating that track? Because obviously, recording software like Pro Tools, I don't even know if it existed or it was obviously in its infancy at the time. How did you create that sort of music concrete song?
That's a good question, because you're right. Pro Tools was definitely not at the level that it is now, nor were any of the other greater mediums. I actually did all of that on I think it was ADATs I had. Do you remember those? It was another recording medium. It was a digital tape machine that had 8 tracks.
Yeah.
And I had a small rig in my apartment that I was living at, and I just started doing that stuff, sound effect stuff. To be honest, that was actually kind of the beginning of my journey into the film and sound design arena, so to speak, which is what I'm still doing today, like we were talking about earlier. So that was kind of it's hard for me to listen to it because it was one of the first things I ever did. But it was a fun thing, everybody wanted some type of cool intro to the record that was kind of cinematic and moody, and I was given the reins to do what I wanted on that thing, and so I just kind of did. And a lot of the sounds, I'd actually go out and record things with this portable tape machine that I have. I just record all natural stuff, and then I'd come back in and I'd put it through the weirdest rack of effects and stuff, and then start designing my own sounds out of it.
Is that where a bunch of the other sound effects came from too? Like there's the train on, I think it's Disconnected, and there's a bunch of other sound effects for that whole record.
Yeah, that's actually me doing exactly what you just said. Yep, you got me. That's all me. Yeah. And fun stuff. And the great thing, once again, about Jimbo and working with him on the Promiseland record was, he loved me doing that because, he was really into, taking things and messing them up, like sounds and stuff, or just creating atmospheres out of like the weirdest things we could think of. And so I would just come in and put all this stuff together, and then I'd play it for him. He'd go, "This is so great. We can have so much fun with this." So it was a great feedback type of thing. And because it would have been easy for everybody to go, "This is the weirdest stuff, and we don't want to hear it on the record." It could have been that type of thing.
Yeah.
I got lucky.
Well, that's a nice thing too. That's something you need in a producer, someone to say, "This is cool, keep it." You know, someone with definitely more of an open mind.
Yeah, you know.
So then, so jumping ahead a few more years, after Here in the Now Frontier, EMI sort of went belly up, or I don't know the exact story, but Chris DeGarmo left the band. How did the band dynamic change when he left?
Well, you know, that was definitely an interesting turning point for us. And you're right, EMI, for sake of argument, I guess, it went belly up. You know, the whole industry thing and some of the labels. That was kind of the beginning of in '97, I think, of some interesting things going on with you know, record companies, and the internet was starting to become a thing. And I mean, that was in the early days, obviously. But anyway, Chris, at that point, reason why, you know, he wanted to pursue other things. He felt like he had done what he wanted musically in his life and wanted to move on. And that was all fine. We're still friends to this day, by the way, so it's all good. You know, so it was interesting. It took us a little bit for the rest of us to kind of, you know, figure out what we wanted to do. And then it was just kind of made sense. We realized we didn't want to stop. We just wanted to keep going. And so we did. You know, we kind of just transitioned. Our management was really supportive of us just moving on. And they always knew, and we always knew, that the band didn't mean just one person anyway. It was always about the collective unit that was always good, and we always worked together well, and we had a great creative energy together. And so we just moved on. You know, we found somebody to fill the shoes for where Chris had left off, and kept making records. You know?
And then, so Kelly, I know Jeff knew in his early days. Is that how you guys brought him back on board again? Like, did you guys go through a big audition process, or did you just kind of go, who should we get? Oh, I know Kelly, let's get him.
You know, it really was. We've been fortunate with any time we've had to do something like that in our career with, you know, a member or anything like that. It's always been non-auditions, you know, because that has just never really appealed to us. So we've always been fortunate that we know some great people. And Kelly was somebody that actually, I actually went to high school with Kelly. I actually went to the same high school with him.
Oh, I see.
We graduated the same year, and we knew each other very well back then as well. So it was an easy thing. He, you know, he was a guitar player, and we needed one, and we knew that he could fill the shoes, and he was ready to do it. So we just jumped in and started making that record, which was Q2K, that we did with him together. And then we went out and did a tour to support that. So yeah, it was kind of like it was seamless, to be honest, right at that point.
And then addition to Q2K with Kelly, you also did Slave to the System. How did that whole project come about?
Yeah, you've done your homework, Brandon.
I own 2 versions of that record, so believe me, I know it well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Listen, I got to be honest, that's one of the funnest records I've made one of the funnest outside of Queensryche things I've actually ever done. I love that record. I think we did some really fun songs on that record together. And listen, that was Kelly and I. We had gotten done touring on Q2K. You know, we went around the world and did our 6 months or whatever we did that year. And we came home and we're like, what are we going to do now? Because we're not, you know, we're going to take some time. And Queensryche, everybody's going to kind of, you know, chill for a bit. And he just said, listen, I know this guy named Damon Johnson from a band called Brother Kane. You know, he's really great. Why don't we get together and make a record? So this is a funny story, Brandon. You'll find this interesting. And I said, okay. And I knew of Brother Kane, but I'd never met Damon or Roman, who was also in Slaves with me as well. And they both came from this band called Brother Kane. And I never met him. We flew him into town. We sat in the studio. We set a studio up and at Kelly's house. We started playing music together. This is like from day one. We hadn't written a note or even met each other yet. We started playing, and within 3 weeks, that record was finished. That was it.
Wow, that's insane.
That was it. Written, recorded, and mixed in 3 weeks. And now there's a chemistry for you.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I can't believe that. Meeting out of nowhere, not having any songs prepped, and in 3 weeks you come out with a record. That blows my mind.
Yeah, it was a great thing. Like I said, it's one of those magical moments that maybe that's why I enjoy it so much. And I do think that there's a lot of fans of that Slave to the System record, by the way. It actually did very well. It even went to radio and did very well when it came out. And, well, it's funny, it's had legs forever. We put it out in 2001 on our own, I think, or 2000 on our own. But then it got signed in 2006 by a label that picked it up. And then it went to radio, and we hit number 25 on the charts. So it was like, wow,
The thing that shocked me about that was I bought it back in, like 2001, whenever it came out. And then out of nowhere, I hear it on the local rock station in Detroit in 2006. And I go, they're playing, what's going on? Because that album was it was independent and, that was it. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's back again.
Yeah, it's funny. It still hasn't even seen the biggest light of day either. I think if it really had, some major support, and something, it could have been interesting, because I think there's some pretty fun songs on it. But that's just my opinion. But what a fun thing, when you find these certain treasures in your life that you look back on and you go, I'll always remember that one for sure, because that was a cool thing, and I like it even to this day. I can listen to that record to this day, and I still enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so for Tribe, you guys got back in contact with Chris DeGarmo again. Was he originally supposed to come back and rejoin the band, or did you guys know all along, hey, I'll help you write some songs and I'm going back to my own life?
It was totally not a full-time thing for him again. And it really was just, listen, we're going to go make this record. We got this songs together, Tribe, we're going to get ready to go and record. You want to get together and co-write a couple songs together for the record. It was really just to have fun, to be honest. Because like I said, Chris, even though Chris left in '97, we've stayed friends. All of us have, and Michael especially. Michael has been really close with him ever since then. They constantly see each other. They play golf. They go out to dinner. They do their thing. And Chris and I are actually getting together here soon. Him and my birthdays are both in June. We're one day apart, and we're both turning 50 in the middle of June, coming up soon. So his wife called me 2 days ago and asked if we should all get together and go out. So that's where we're still at to this day. So Tribe was just one of those things of going, hey, man, what are you doing? Well, we're making a record, Chris. What are you doing? I don't know. Should we do something together? Okay. It's like that capture, and it's fun. And so we always have a good time together. It's just kind of one of those things,
Yeah. And then where did Mike Stone come into all this? Because I know he was involved with the making of the record too.
Yeah, that's right. That's actually when Stone kind of first got into the band at that point. So we had ended our time with Kelly. Kelly moved on from after doing Q2K and the tour and everything. He moved on. So in about 2003, I think we're talking, is when we did Tribe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And that's when Stone was somebody I think that Michael knew, and that he got introduced to us and was a good fit and worked, and we were able to go out and tour, and we were able to start making that record. And then, once we was in with us, it's just a natural thing. If he had a good idea, we wanted to work on it. And I think he's got a couple songs that are on that record. And I'm sorry I'm being so vague. I actually don't have all the credits and all this history of Queensryche in front of me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Even though I was there, it's like I don't remember half of it. So, but that's kind of how he got in the fold. And he lasted for, many years with us up until I think 2008 or 9, Stoney was with us. So probably a good 5 years, I think he was with us.
Yeah. In the court documents, it says that you, Eddie, and Michael have sort of been marginalized on the last couple albums, Mindcrime 2 and American Soldier and Dedicated, which, I mean, the one thing that sort of shocked me the most was finding out that you supposedly weren't on Mindcrime 2. Is that true?
Well, it's true to the final extent. It's not true in the fact that I was completely involved with the record. I mean, we all worked on every single one of the records that we've done, and we recorded and did all the things that we do together. Now, the struggle that you're now talking about in this current day, so now you're talking about the court and all the stuff that went down last year and everything, and it goes back to those days. So Mindcrime 2 was kind of the beginning of an internal struggle that we were having in our music opinions together. Michael, Eddie, and I actually were on the same page, as we say, but Jeff really was different than us in terms of what we thought Queensryche should be doing. And then also, even though we kept doing it together, Mindcrime 2 was the beginning of a struggle of who we're going to do things with and what type of music. But so anyway, I was involved with that record, but what happened in kind of a summary is just that people got involved that Jeff insisted on working with, and once they did, things started to get changed. And so the final end-all is I can't even tell you exactly what is all us and what is not us. It's a bizarre situation. And listen, you're probably going to go, well, why did you allow that stuff to happen? Because that's that's been a question with all these interviews and people that we've been talking to for the last year about the transition and, the ongoing struggle. But it's kind of like a divorce, Brandon. When in the beginning you're together for a long time, it seems fine, and then all of a sudden something starts to not feel right or work right.
Yeah.
But it's not a catastrophe yet at that point. It hasn't gotten to the boiling point yet. So you kind of struggle, but you keep going, maybe hoping things are going to start to get better. And maybe for us, maybe from record to record at that point, we were hoping, all right, let's just get this one done and get it out. I'm going to be a part of it. We'll put it out and we'll move on to the next one. But then the next one becomes a little bit harder of a struggle and nothing is changing for the better. So it just built. And that's where we built up until last year, where we just couldn't let it go anymore.
It's not like you hit a brick wall and shit just hit the fan at once. It was like, piece and piece and piece, and you don't want to throw away your whole life's work just over one little tough, right?
Exactly. It's kind of like you start, you pick your battles. I mean, that's what I try to teach my kids even. It's like, make sure in life you pick the appropriate battles. Now, and what I mean by that is when it first started to become a struggle, okay, maybe this isn't as big of a battle as I think it's going to be. I'm just going to let it move on. We'll be a part of it. We'll move on, and maybe it'll get better, kind of like what you're saying. But then it just doesn't. Starts to steamroll over the years and become this, huge snowball that just won't stop, and the struggle is becoming apparent that it ain't going to get any better, and that's kind of what happened by last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, do you feel that you guys were sort of shut out of the creative process on the last couple of records as well? Like not only the recording process, but also the writing side of it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a huge part of the struggle, was definitely music and creative direction for what we felt the band should be doing. And listen, Michael, Eddie, and I have always been kind of on the same page. We have a great chemistry together, hence why we're still working together now. But we wanted to make certain types of music for Queensryche that we knew was best, and we were writing and submitting, and Jeff just didn't want to have it, to be honest. He was just not into that. He doesn't like that direction, didn't want to continue in the direction that we felt Queensryche was best at doing. And that became a massive struggle, and that's where he started only working on songs that were submitted by his friends.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So if you dug deeper into our catalog, which you probably will if you haven't when we get off the phone, because you sound like you're going to. You'll see that there's all sorts of credited people writing stuff that turned out to be this group of dudes, one or two guys that Jeff decided to spend a lot of time with, and that was becoming a major problem.
Yeah, well, I know like Jason Slater, he's sort of all over the last 3 albums.
That's right. That's exactly one of the examples I'm talking about. And it was not doing well for any of us, and Michael and I just got tired of it. I mean, that's really what it got to, is we got tired of it, and we put up with it for as long as we thought we could, trying to hopefully get things back, and that maybe someday it would change back to what we wanted. That was kind of it, and maybe we had blinders on for a little too long, but who knows? I guess hindsight is always 20/20 at this point.
Yeah.
But we're glad it's all moved on. We're so much better and in a much better place now, and then listen, I'll jump forward, but you can still continue after I do. But jumping forward to the new record. Now, this new record that we have out now with our new singer, Todd, this is what we've been wanting to do for a long time and have been trying. So this is where our excitement is now, and we're getting some great response on the new record, but we're really proud of what we're doing now. And we're just glad that we're able to do it after so many years, that we have been given a second chance to do this, and have found a guy that we can do it with, which is Todd.
Yeah, and that sounds like as good a place as any to take a break. So we've got to go to another break right now, but I'm going to ask you to pick a couple songs, and then we'll transition into what you guys are doing now with Todd. Can you pick a song off of Empire, since we talked about that?
Yeah, wow. I'm going to say Della Brown.
Nice. Yeah, I know, it's funny. For years, Della Brown was the one song on the first 5 albums that I just, for some reason, didn't like. And then one day that song just clicked, and then I couldn't imagine not hearing it. It's just a great tune.
That's funny, right? It wasn't great. I love that. Creates longevity when songs still do something, whether they did at the time or not. Maybe it means something for our longevity, I guess. Yeah. I wrote part of that song, so I kind of had to think about it, so that's fine.
Yeah, you know, the one part of that tune that I love is the first, like, second of the song where those high-tuned rototoms come in and just sort of cut through. I love the sound of those.
Yeah, that was a Jimbo thing, by the way. He goes, hey, why don't you whack that high tom really fucking hard, and we'll tune it real high and make it sound like some weird, cool thing. I'm like, okay. Okay, I'll do it. You know?
Nice.
Yeah.
And then could you do a song off of the Slave to the System album?
Oh, yeah. Fun stuff. That's a hard one because I love all of that stuff, to be honest. That was such a fun record. Probably the title track, Slave to the System.
Cool. Okay, and can you pick one song sort of to tease a new record, and then we'll talk about it when we come back from the break?
Yeah, no worries. I certainly can. I'm going to say Redemption.
Great. All right, cool. So from Queensryche, this is Della Brown off of Empire, and we'll be back to finish off the show with more Scott Rockenfield. 99.1 CJAM-FM. There's brand new Queensryche from their new self-titled album. That song called Redemption right there. Before that, we had Slave to the System, a band featuring Scott Rockenfield and Kelly Gray of Queensryche, and that was their self-titled track. And kicking everything off from Queensryche's Empire album, that was Della Brown. And speaking of Queensryche, for the last hour and a half, we've had Scott Rockenfield on the show hanging out, and he's going to stick around for the remainder. And we've talked about the band's early career, and now it's finally time to delve into this new material. So Scott, the feeling I get is very sort of old school with sort of a modern twist. It sounded like you're really paying homage to the first, 5 or 6 records that you guys did.
Yeah, thanks. And then you and I can circle back around and we can talk about it, which I would love to do because you sound like you're like a Queensryche historian.
I'll take it as a compliment.
It's a great thing because that's exactly what we tried to do on this record and wanted to do was to get the band back to the era that we thought was the most special time for us. And what I mean is basically, for Michael, Eddie, and I, we wanted to focus on what we did from the EP all the way up to Promiseland because we felt those first 6 records were a huge defining moment for Queensryche in its 30-something years of our career. And the energy we had back then, the creative energy we had, and everything. And we've struggled for the last few years of wanting to do that, but not being allowed to.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure we got back to that, and that's why we also brought James Barton back in to do this new record with us, because it brings us back to that Mindcrime Empire and Promiseland era with him as well. And the great thing that we're getting right now that we're so happy to hear is a lot of the response that from people that have heard the record in the media and everything else is that it sounds like this new record should have been released like right after Empire.
Yeah.
It fits right in there for us. And so anyway, again, one of the reasons why we feel just so great these days because we feel successful in our own quest to have made the record that we've done. And we're proud of ourselves, and we also are just glad that it feels like that type of thing again for us.
So now, obviously, you guys have a new singer after sort of shit hit the fan last summer.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Okay, well, first let's sort of address that, and then we'll jump into Todd and everything else. The first I heard that there were really any grumblings were the Brazil incident. Did you feel that was sort of the beginning of the end when that all went down?
Well, that was definitely the what do they call it? The
straw that broke the camel's back.
There you go. Thank you. That was definitely the final straw for certain of that whole incident that happened there, and there had been some serious disagreements that were brewing just prior to that, of that year. So just the months building up to that were definitely becoming not so good for us. Anyway, that was, listen, for what it's worth, that was, the time that it really broke. The camel's back broke right then in Brazil, and we moved on. Interestingly enough, if you want to know, if you're going to ask me, where did we find Todd or how that whole thing happened, it's kind of an interesting story. To be honest.
Am now, so can you please answer it?
Yeah, Max. Well, listen, because it's a great segue into that. So I'll do that now, because another interesting story of perfect timing and it was kind of meant to be. And what I mean is, Michael had met Todd just that prior January. So of January of 2012, nobody knew of Todd in Queensryche, other than maybe if they knew he was in Crimson Glory at the time. But other than that, none of us had known him on a personal level. Michael met him at the NAMM convention in California in January. They just bumped into each other at one of the dinner parties that night, and they just started talking about doing some music together. That was it. Wasn't anything about Queensryche or nothing. It was just about having fun together because 2012 was turning out to be kind of a downtime for Queensryche because Jeff was going to go off doing a bunch of solo touring, which left Michael and Eddie and I not really doing anything at the time, you know?
Yeah.
So Michael met Todd, and then after the Brazil incident happened and all that, Michael said, listen, why don't we get Todd out here, because he lived in Florida and we were in Seattle. Why don't we fly him out? Listen to him on YouTube, by the way, is what Michael told me. He can play, he can do stuff with us, and he's really a great Queensryche fan. He'd love to do it. Why don't we put together a great old Queensryche set list, call the band something different, and play a couple of shows? Just to have fun. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So we booked 2 shows in Seattle at the Hard Rock Cafe. They sold out in like 48 hours, both shows, right? And I still hadn't met Todd yet. So these shows were booked, sold out, and confirmed. And we hadn't played a note together yet to even know if this was going to work.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So we fly Todd out. Both those shows were on June 8th and June 9th of last year. So we flew Todd out 9 days prior to those shows. I still hadn't met him, and we hadn't played a note yet. And there was 850 fans flying in from every corner of the world to see this thing that we were going to do, right?
Like one guy was from Japan or something, right?
There was people from Japan and Australia and New Zealand, and it was just like the most eclectic group of people from around the globe. It was like 18 different languages in the same room or some weird thing.
That's crazy. Wow.
It's fun. All right, we got some crazy fans, so in a good way, but some crazy fans. So anyway, listen, he showed up at my house, and we sat down and played Queen of the Reich 6 days prior to us doing that show. And the second we played Queen of the Reich, it was all over. It was like, wow, this is going to be fun, and this is going to work. And we had such a great time. So we just rehearsed for 5 days, and we did both those shows, and they were so well received. And then, we had gone through this thing with Jeff, and so basically in late June or something like that, we just decided that since we were moving on with Jeff, we just asked Todd to come in with us and do Queensryche. And he was like, I'm in. Sounds fun to me. Let's go. We haven't looked back since. So
that's great. And then,
talk about luck, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then, so you guys also have Parker in the band, who I guess always seems to get sadly ignored, but the guy's a hell of a guitar player. How was he added to the band?
Parker's a great kid, by the way, and I love it, and we really love him. And he came in 09, and he was just somebody we knew. He actually worked at the local guitar center here in town. So just through a channel of Michael or Eddie or somebody that knew him, we got him in the band, and he just worked out perfectly. And we've moved on ever since. And he's just the perfect fit. He's kind of just really great at loving the old stuff and learning it whenever we want to play some new song that's from the old catalog, he'll know it before I do.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the way he is. He's just that eager and enthusiastic. And so it's a perfect fit. And the great thing about Parker, by the way, and I'm glad you're bringing it up because we have such a great relationship, all of us together, but Parker is just on cloud 9 these days. He's so fun to be around. And listen, the song Where Dreams Go to Die, which is probably one of the ones you've heard off the new record,
yep.
That's written by Parker. Actually, the whole song is written by Parker. The vocals, the lyrics, the melody, everything was written by Parker on that. So it's time for Parker to have some fun, and we do, because he's a talented kid, and he wrote and did all sorts of great stuff on this new record, and our goal is always to make a great record. So whoever in the band is offering good stuff, there we are. And I'm just glad that he's starting to get recognized as a solid member of what we're doing together.
Yeah, because it seemed like for the last couple of years, he's just kind of been this hired gun. And then as soon as you guys brought Todd in, you guys just sort of said, look, we're a tight unit. We're finally a band again.
For certain. And we sat down and said, listen, this is going to be, all 5 of us are going to deal. This is a band now of 5. None of us are hired guns. Nobody's going to be that way in this situation now. Because, and now it's under our control and our guidance, the collective 5 of us now with Todd and Parker. So everything we do is all together. So are we all in? That was an easy kind of vote right then. Everybody was so jazzed about it. So that's kind of the energy that we put out to, all of us as we first got together to do this is, the goal is to just have fun and take the band as far as we can go, but let's just do it together.
Yeah.
And that's it. It makes for a much more solid relationship when you drop those walls of, the employee wall. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And Parker, he's on cloud nine even more now since we brought him in and, opened it up to acceptance all the way around. And so it's a good thing. It works for me better because it works for him better. You know what I mean? We're building our empire once again is what we're doing. So.
Yeah. And then, so how is it writing, like you talked a little bit about with Parker with Where Dreams Go to Die, but how is it writing with these two new members in the band, or, one new member and one new full-time member? And was there like a different energy, or like how did the whole dynamic change on this record in terms of writing?
God, it was so fantastic. I mean, Brandon, like I said, we really did transport ourselves back into that first 15 years of our career where we were really energetic and had this chemistry that was just firing on all pistons. And that happened. I'll give you a couple of great examples of what happened. One of them is the Parker one I just gave you about the song Where Dreams Go to Die, that he wrote and did everything. And it was just such a great song. We just played on it. Todd's like, fuck, I'm not going to sit here and go, no, I'm not going to let you write the lyrics and the melodies because that's my job. Todd was like, that's great, Parker. Sounds awesome. When do I get to sing it? That's the type of enthusiasm that we all brought to the table. But another great example of a chemistry that I haven't had for a long time, and I'm so proud to be a part of now, is with Todd. Because I know Michael and Eddie well. We write great stuff together, and we already know it because we've done it for so long. But bringing Todd in, the example is one of these. There's a song on the record called A World Without, and I wrote everything in my house. So one day I'm sitting in my studio when we first just started writing songs, but I'm sitting in my studio and I wrote the song, right? Just this framework of a song, guitars and drums and all this. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. So I sent it to Todd. I just emailed it to him going, hey, man, check this out. And 2 hours later, the phone rings, and he's like in happy tears on the phone. He's so emotionally just in a perfect spot. And I'm like, what's up? He's like, the song's done. I'm like, what song? He goes, the one you just sent me. It's done. He goes, it was the most moving piece of music that brought me to a place, and I'm just so touched by it. So check it out. And he had sent it back to me, and that's the song. That's A World Without, was done in about 2.5 hours. And then the following week was another song called Open Road, which was done the same way. I sent it to him, and 2 hours later he finished it and sent it back to me. Listen, that's an amazing type of chemistry that, as me and what I've done for a long time, it was an absolute non-struggle. It was like the most cool thing. And this whole record came together for all of us like that in the most just energetic, fun way. And I think the proof is just in our success with it, that we feel so good about it. And I think our fans are already, just really feeling that energy. And so I think it's hard to deny that type of energy when you have that type of thing going on together. And listen, we've already started working on songs for the next record because we're so ready to just keep going and doing it.
That's great. Do you think you'll keep Jimbo Barton on as a producer for the next one as well?
Well, nobody ever has a crystal ball, Brandon, but if you want my personal opinion, Jimbo's not going to go anywhere, because he's a huge, and I don't think I'd be the only one to say that, because we had the best time, and he was such a great, perfect match for making us make this record. And one thing that's great about him is us already knowing him from the past was a perfect place to start. So we didn't have to redesign a relationship or design a new relationship with somebody we didn't know to make the record with us. So that was the reason why we chose him. But we knew that once we got in the studio that he was just going to make us be the best we possibly could be. And that's what he's always done, and that's his perfect personality with us. And then he's also just great with creative ideas and songs and everything. So yes, I think that if we have our way about it, we're going to keep working together because I think it's an important relationship.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've been saying for the last 10, 15 years, every time you guys do a new album, it's, Kelly Gray producing and Jason Slater, and I've always been going, these albums sound good, but it really needs a Jimbo Barton behind it.
Yeah, thanks.
And so I was excited to hear when you guys first announced that he was coming back.
Yeah, thanks, man. He'll love to hear that. I'm going to call him after this and tell him that he was half of our interview. Hey, listen, just on a side note with Jimbo as well. Listen, Jimbo is the one that I've been doing these film trailers and stuff recently. I do the music, and he mixes everything and adds even more, ideas that I didn't think about. So we've been collaborating on a bunch of this stuff, and we have more stuff that's coming down the line. So that's where my relationship even goes deeper with him. So it's a fun thing.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And then I know for the last year touring, you guys have been focusing, I guess, exclusively on the first 5 albums. Are you guys planning on adding any new tracks to the set? Like, I know Fallout was one of them. Have you guys played Redemption yet?
We have, actually. Yeah, thanks. And we actually did that last weekend at the German show that we did, the Rock Hard Festival, where we played the Fallout. Maybe that's where you might have seen a live clip.
Yeah.
I think there's on. But we did Redemption at that show as well. So those are the only 2 new ones that we currently have in the set, because it's just still fresh for us. Geez, we only finished the record a few weeks ago or something like that. It's been quite the whirlwind, Brandon, to be honest, in a good way, but crazy. We start rehearsals in about 10 days here in Seattle, and then we're basically learning like the entire record, the new record. So I think it's going to give us an opportunity to play everything at some point. So that's why we're just going to learn it all and have it ready to go. And we're also working on new old songs. So throwing in because listen, it's funny, we have to use both those words in the same sentence, because our set list right now, playing Queen of the Reich is actually new for us. So it's a new old song that we're doing, and that's how we kind of talk to each other about those. How many more new old songs do we want to play, guys? So
Yeah.
And we're looking at learning some more of that, and then just other, just more cool Queensryche stuff, so that we can keep fattening out the set or changing it up every night, depending on where we're at and what we're doing. So a lot of fun stuff. And listen, it's a huge opportunity. I mean, Brandon, we haven't played Queen of the Reich in like 30 years or something. It's been a bit dodgy. Listen, and all that other stuff, Enforce and The Warning and Child of Fire, from the Warning record. I can't remember the last times we played some of those. It's been the same kind of thing. Now they're absolutely they're staying in the set because they're so great, and our fans are just going crazy for that stuff. So it's a lot of fun. We're blessed that we have Todd, who can really represent our old catalog and is doing a fantastic job of representing it, but also being himself, by the way, and he's doing really well. And the audience is totally embracing it, and they're allowing him to just be himself and become a part of Queensryche. And now we have the new stuff that we can now do together too. So, can you see where the light at the end of my tunnel is like right in my face right now, because I'm having such a great time in life?
Yeah.
It's hard to deny it over here. Yeah, it's good.
Do you think you guys will touch on any Promiseland material in the set? Because I've never heard you guys play Promiseland in any of the sets I've seen you.
Oh, wow, you have missed, and that's actually a lot of fun. And yes, we are. We are going to be working on some great stuff off of Promiseland as well. I Am I, and just some of the other really great ones off of there. I think they're going to be added here soon, so for certain.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So obviously you guys have the new album coming out. What else do you think the future holds for yourself and Queensryche?
Crazy times. We got shows all through the U.S. in the summer. We're going to Mexico, doing a show there. We just got back from doing some shows in Europe. And then we do, so we play all through the summer at a bunch of different places. And then we're doing a full-on European tour in October. And it's all like, it gets bigger by the day because we have, some really talented agents that are taking care of everything that we're doing now. And so the schedule gets bigger and larger every day of my life. But that's what we're doing. We're touring. We're going to get out and play all year long. And then while we're doing that, we're going to be writing another record because we're really having a good time doing that too. So, it's just life goes on.
That's great. And it sounds like you're in a much better place now too.
Yeah, I haven't been the happiest camper musically with the Queensryche thing for a while. None of us have, to be honest. So, in all honesty, yeah, it's really great. Michael, Eddie, and I are really feeling good together these days and having a great time, and we're smiling. And the corniest thing is to have a metal band that smiles on stage, but it's kind of hard not to when we're finally doing what we've been wanting to do, and the fans are smiling back at us. So that's been a great thing, but. Yeah, it's good. We're good. I think the future is really bright, and we feel really confident that, the Queensryche thing is being brought back to what it should be, and we feel that we're the ones that should be doing it,
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's a perfect note to go out on. So, Scott, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out to do this.
Hey, listen, thanks a lot, man, for taking the time
Oh,
today.
no problem. Before I let you go, can I get you to pick 2 songs off of the new record?
Yeah, no worries. Spore
Okay.
and Vindication.
Cool. All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for giving your time to do this interview. It's very much appreciated, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for actually doing your research, too. It was fun to chat about all that stuff, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, no worries.
All right.
Thanks again.
Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon, bro. All right.
All right. Bye-bye. That was Scott Rockenfield, the drummer of Queensryche right there. They have a brand new self-titled album out now in stores, and they're going to be playing Friday, August 23rd in Sterling Heights, Michigan, alongside Vince Neil and Slaughter at Freedom Hill, so make sure to check that out. And until next week, this is Queensryche with Vindication. Thanks again, Scott, and I will see you next week.